As 2026 starts, I want you to know that you have the moral wind in your sails. A critical question to think about is, where are the moral winds blowing? In other words, at the moment, if you want to do the right thing, what does that mean? The ethical, moral thing. Where is that blowing? And without a doubt, in Cape Town, Western Cape, as well as Southern Africa, and in fact the whole world, the moral winds are blowing in the direction of decentralization, of local institutions, neighborhood watches, small business networks, independent media, small independent schools. That is where it is blowing. The immoral, unethical, wrong way to be heading is towards the centralized, integrated, singular state or system. That is the unethical way to move. But the moral way is to move towards decentralization digitally, decentralization economically, socially, focus on families and your neighbors, because you're not an island, you have neighbors around. The moral thing to do for you for 2026 to move in that direction is to do what's in the interest of your community. And you only really understand this when you understand that the way in which not only Cape Town, the Western Cape where I am, but Southern Africa and many other countries are heading is towards greater authoritarianism, greater control. And you know this because of a number of things. The first thing is the control over the narrative or speech. Now, what will happen is that those with contrary evidence, such as what we put out at the Cape Independence, we put out evidence that makes people think, that makes people question what's happening. It's contrary very often, not because we want to be contrary, but it's evidence that is very often contrary to the dominant narrative. And so we will be, framed as spreading misinformation or being fake news or whatever, playing the political game. This is what happens when you have an authoritarian, centrally controlled, unethical, singular, dominant system, is that it will label any other dissenting voices, for example, even if the dissent is true, they will label it as misinformation. So that's the one evidence, and you're seeing this everywhere. Number two, another evidence that everything around you is heading towards this immoral central point is around quota systems, around these sheets that state that your business or your area must have X amount of these type of people, Y amount of those. So quotas or targets. That's another way in which because there is control, trying to control. And then of course you have the drive towards digital centralization, central currencies, digital currencies would be one, but there's many other ways. And again, this is immoral, and these are the signs that we are heading in this direction. It's like a python that wraps itself around and chokes. So now people will say, well, to fight against that and to build small independent institutions is hard work. Of course it's hard work. And of course it's going to be uncomfortable and difficult, and it will take sacrifice. But if you don't do it, your children and grandchildren, it's going to be much worse for them. So in 2026, the moral winds are in your sails towards driving towards decentralization. However it may come. Maybe you're into business, or you're into education, or you're into media. Independent stuff. And there's so many ways of doing this. It just takes the choice and to follow through with that into action. So in 2026, as the moral winds blow in your sails towards moving away from the central point with others, what are you going to do? What are you going to build? What are you going to join? At the Cape Indie newspaper, you're welcome to obviously join what we're doing. But maybe there's a particular passion that you have to move in that direction. And it will be uncomfortable. But, I mean, climbing Mount Everest is uncomfortable. Taking on any great challenge is uncomfortable. Going to the moon, Mars, is uncomfortable. But in the current situation we're in, is if we don't do it, our children and grandchildren are going to have it much worse than what we have it. Because what will happen is that it'll spiral, and it will just eat itself up. That's what authoritarian control systems like what we have in Southern Africa do. They're just spirals, and it'll just eat itself up. And it'll eat up everything else with it. When a fire is burning, you got to burn fire breaks. You got to burn fire breaks this year. How are you going to do that? And churches and Christians also have a role to play in this. I'm a Christian, and if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, this is not a video where I'm going to evangelize you. But if you're a Christian and you're watching this, the church needs to be independent from the state and independent and a local institution that is focusing on its local community. So Christians and the church have a huge part to play in this move towards small local groups of people that are focusing on their area. So that would be a thought for today and for 2026, that the moral winds are in your sails. Go for it.